Today on Fear and Greed, the ASX hits a new record high just as the Reserve Bank cautions on hopes for a rate cut. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese treads a fine line in trade talks with China's Xi Jinping, and Bunnings found to have invaded people's privacy via its facial recognition technology. Plus, more on the G20 summit, the country's top accountants, and why the regulator told super fund HESTA to compensate 120,000 members. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Wednesday, the 20th of November, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
What an introduction. So much going on, Michael.
There is a lot coming up today, Sean. It is a bumper edition. The main story this morning, the local share market hit a new record high yesterday, climbing above 8,400 points for the first time ever. Quite the milestone, really, meaning the market is up 11% this year.
It peaked at 8,446 points before falling sharply in the final few minutes of trading to close up nearly 1% to 8,374 points. Until about 10 to 4 yesterday afternoon, we thought we'd have a close above 8,400 points. Wasn't to be. The range of stocks trading at or near record highs is broad. A few, certainly not an exhaustive list, but a few include Aristocrat Leisure, the gaming manufacturer, the gaming machine manufacturer, Brambles, the pallet maker, Commonwealth Bank, Computershare, Goodman Group, the industrial property group, Hub24, which is a wealth platform, retailer JB Hi-Fi, Pro Medicus, which is a medical company, obviously, an imaging company, better put, Qantas Real Estate, REA, that is, WiseTech Global and Xero, they're both tech companies. It just goes to show the broad range of companies doing well at the moment. A bunch of other tech stocks are also near highs. That's been the best performing sector all year. It's up 44%. The biggest influence on the index is the banks. They're up 36% this year. Now, financials make up about 31% of the market. So when you have a 36% rise in the financials, then you are definitely going to have a big jump in the ASX. The next biggest sector on the market is basic materials at 19.3%. That includes the big miners. They've really been the laggards. I mean, imagine if that done okay, Michael. Imagine if BHP and Rio had taken off. Whew, couldn't stop
extraordinary.
It would. Tails away then. Healthcare is about 9%, industrial is about 8.6%, but the financials at 31% really are the big guys, but the market is flying high.
Yeah, it's great news for shareholders. I suppose the big question though, Sean, and you know I'm going to ask you this, can it keep going?
Maybe. Maybe not.
Perfect. I love a definitive answer.
That's right. I mean, Wall Street and lower taxes under, Donald Trump 2.0 is helping confidence, as are hopes of rate cuts locally. That's what has gotten the market going. The idea of rate cuts here, they took something of a blow yesterday. The Reserve Bank board minutes were released. They show that the central bank is still worried that core inflation is too high, proving very difficult to get that core or underlying inflation into the 2 to 3% target band. The minutes show that the board looked at cutting rates. They also looked at keeping rates at this level for quite some time. They want to see more than one quarterly or good quarterly result on inflation. So they say that's 2 good CPI figures. That pretty much pushes out a rate cut beyond April next year, because April 30 is when the March quarter data is released. The Reserve Bank needs 2 good figures. Now, the most recent underlying rates, 3.5%. Governor Michelle Bullock's made it pretty clear that isn't good. Therefore, we need another 2 good pieces of inflation news. So on that logic, we really can't have a rate cut before May next year.
Well, you're a bad news Barry, aren't you? You said the word good so many times, and then I'm like, it's building some good news, and then you just bust out, not till May. Let's look again at markets then, specifically yesterday. Let's kind of zero in here. The stocks that did well, or otherwise, I suppose, as well, yesterday.
Zero in, I like that. Xero did do well. The tech stocks were the outperformers. Tech index up 3.1%. Telco and energy and industrials also did well. Best of the lot was a group called Technology One. It surged more than 10% after the enterprise software company said net profit for the year ending 30 September was up 15%. Among the large caps, there was Woodside and Santos were both higher on the back of a jump in oil prices. Newmont, which is listed here, Canadian group, bought local gold producer Newcrest. It surged after it agreed to sell a mine in Canada. The other news out yesterday, KMD Brands, owner of Kathmandu and Rip Curl, had its annual general meeting, very cautious on consumer sentiment, said conditions remained challenging. It was down a couple of percent.
Hey, Sean, just quickly, on the topic of AGMs,
yes.
Yesterday, for anybody who missed it, the Ask, Fear and Greed bonus episode, because we put these out on Tuesdays and Fridays at midday. And yesterday we answered a question from a particularly disgruntled listener by the name of Phil, who has really got a bee in his bonnet about AGMs at the moment. And so it's worth going back and having a listen to it, because it's just all about what is the value of an AGM in an age where some of the big super funds are so influential, and whether there's any point in kind of having an AGM for small investors to head along and have their say as well. And it was just, you did a great job at calming Phil down, I think, Sean.
I thought you did a great job at revving him up.
Yeah.
Pointing out that he was a bit angry.
Yeah, really did. But go and check that one out. It's a good explainer. And if you've got your own question for Ask, Fear and Greed, then feel free to send it on through and put a bit of attitude into it. We love that as well, just like Phil. Just quickly, much going on in international markets, Sean?
Wall Street closed higher yesterday. The standout was Tesla, up more than 5% on hopes the incoming Trump government will support a push for self-driving cars. There are also reports that Donald Trump's social media company, Trump Media and Technology Group, is in advanced talks to buy a crypto trading venue called Bakkt, B-A-K-K-T. It's currently owned by the Intercontinental Exchange. The Intercontinental Exchange, otherwise known as ICE, owns the New York Stock Exchange. That's a very big organization. Anyway, it's looking at selling Bakkt to Donald Trump's company. That certainly helped Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin pushed $92,600 yesterday. It's about 1/3 higher than when Donald Trump was elected. The US dollar's come off a bit, and that's helped the Aussie. It's back above 65 US cents.
After the show, you've got a really interesting conversation coming up with William Liu from Wilson Asset Management.
Sure do. All about global stocks. We talk about what's happening in China, in the US, in Europe, and if you're an Australian investor, how do you get exposure to it?
Yeah, great one. It's coming up after the show. Stick around. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says that all Chinese tariffs and other restrictions on $22 billion worth of Australian goods will be removed after he met with President Xi Jinping at the G20 conference in Brazil.
Yes, good news. Anthony Albanese said that he'd improved relations without compromising any of Australia's national interest. Very fine line, that one, because at the meeting, Mr. Xi discussed Australia providing greater foreign investment access to Chinese interests. This is the pointy end of the trade debate for Australia. The tariffs and restrictions imposed under Prime Minister Scott Morrison were, in part, because of Australia's efforts to safeguard its sovereignty and security via foreign investment restrictions. Remember those bans on the Chinese telco Huawei? That's really what it appears Xi is asking Albanese to water down. In short, China will buy more Australian stuff if Chinese enterprises are allowed to invest in this country. Ahead of the meeting, Mr. Xi acknowledged the improvement in relations between the two countries. He added that great care is still needed. Mr. Albanese pushed Mr. Xi on China's support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine and reiterated our position on Taiwan and South China Sea. He also mentioned Huang Hengjun, who has been given a suspended death sentence for espionage.
Superfund giant HESTA will be forced to compensate more than 120,000 members that had their retirement savings in part stranded in unlisted property assets whose values really tumbled in the early days of COVID-19.
Bit technical, stay with me, but it's really fascinating. APRA, Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, said HESTA's procedures for revaluing assets were deficient. And in one case, a member lost $17,000 in 1 week because the super fund had failed to revalue in a timely manner. Takes a bit of explaining this one. APRA wants funds to revalue up and down unlisted assets in a timely manner. So if you invest in BHP, you know exactly what it's worth. If you invest in an unlisted asset, you don't. Not just property here, but we're talking private credit, private equity, infrastructure. Revaluing is really important for the super funds because collectively they own about $650 billion in unlisted assets. In this case, HESTA revalued, made a downward adjustment to 5 investment options that were invested in unlisted assets. It didn't adjust other investments with exposure to the same assets until a week later. So if a member had shifted from an adjusted option to a non-adjusted option within that week, they'd immediately be worse off. That's where one member lost $17,000. The APRA is on a bit of a jihad to get these big super funds to be very accurate in the value of their members' funds as they go, and that's what this is all about.
Goodness me. You'd have to be particularly unlucky to have shifted over within that period,
totally.
right?
Yeah,
Golly,
totally.
You do feel for that member. The next story, Sean, I'll be interested to see what you make of this story. Hardware retailer Bunnings has been found to have invaded the privacy of what is estimated to be hundreds of thousands of customers through the use of intrusive facial recognition cameras at 63 stores across Victoria and New South Wales.
An investigation by the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner found Bunnings had disproportionately collected sensitive information from its customers through the use of those cameras, according to a story in the Australian. Privacy Commissioner Carly Kind said the deployment of facial recognition technology was most disproportionately interfering with the privacy of everyone who entered Bunnings stores. Bunnings defended its actions, with Managing Director Mike Schneider claiming facial recognition technology was only used to protect its team and other customers from violent, aggressive behaviour. Mr. Schneider claimed that Bunnings had processed and deleted the majority of data collected from the facial recognition cameras in 0.00417 seconds. Bottom line in this, I don't want Bunnings to be recognising my face as I walk in, even if they do delete it immediately.
No, they see you walk in and just go, oh, this guy's going straight for the WD-40. That's what they do when they see me. It's the only thing I ever seem to buy there. WD-40 and whippersnipper cable.
But I can't go to Bunnings and not spend at least $100. Like, I want to go and buy, WD-40. It's probably $15.
Yeah.
Walk out spending $152.
That's a lot of WD-40.
It is.
Very true. Hang on. You're buying other things as well.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah.
So this image of you just walking out with this arm full of cans going, he's got a lot of squeaks in his house. Oil giant, oh God, I've just embarrassed myself. Oil giant Santos will boost returns to shareholders once its major projects in Alaska and the Timor Sea come online.
Yes, that should be 2026. The company will return 60% of free cash flow to shareholders. At the moment, it returns about 40%. This all emanates from pressure from institutional investors who just aren't happy with the oil and gas group. There's ongoing speculation about corporate activity. Remember last year they explored a merger with Woodside, which didn't go anywhere. There's talk of Middle East groups interested in buying Santos. Got a couple of big projects coming online, the Barossa Gas Project in the Timor Sea due in the September quarter next year, the Packer Oil Project in Alaska in the first half of 2026. The share price was up yesterday on the news, but it still is at its lowest level since early 2022.
The Packer Oil Project, right? I don't know why, but about 2 months ago, I found myself on YouTube watching videos about oil project. It is spectacular, some of these videos. They're time-lapse videos.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It, and you just see it just appearing out of nowhere in just this snow-covered terrain. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to put a link to one of those videos in the newsletter, which is going out today, the Fear and Greed newsletter. Head along to fearandgreed.com.au and sign up if you want to see these videos. Obviously, there's other stuff in the newsletter as well, but do it for the vids. The AFR, Sean, has released its list of the top 100 accounting firms. And while the Big Four have struggled, the next level of companies, the next lot down, they're the ones benefiting.
Yeah, plenty of turmoil in the sector over the past 12 months, especially PwC, which actually went from 1 to 3 in this ranking. with its revenue down 25%. Of course, some years ago, a senior partner of PwC had leaked information that helped clients avoid tax. The top spot this year went to Deloitte, then EY, PwC, and at number 4, KPMG. The next 5, they were booming. Even if they're not household names, get used to it. You might hear more of them. BDO, Findex, RSM Australia, Grant Thornton, and Pitcher Partners.
Turning to international news now, Germany and Finland say they are deeply concerned about a severed undersea communications cable between the two countries, saying it raises suspicions of possible Russian sabotage.
It's a 1,200-kilometre fibre optic cable. It was cut on Monday morning in the Baltic Sea, close to Sweden. Now, a Swedish telco said a communications cable between Sweden and Lithuania was also damaged. NATO nations at the moment are on edge around infrastructure in the Baltic Sea ever since the still unexplained explosions of the Nord Stream gas pipelines between Russia and Germany in 2022. Germany and Finnish foreign ministers put out a joint statement. They said security is under threat not only from Russia, but also other malicious actors. We're in all sorts of trouble if some of these big infrastructure plays are damaged. Now, having said all that, there's also part of the note saying that it could have just been a ship or an anchor.
Or a crab with particularly strong claws.
Moving on.
G20 nations have called for taxation on the super rich, measures to alleviate poverty, and a ceasefire in Gaza, Sean.
This was in a statement after the first 2 days of the meeting in Rio de Janeiro. The host, Brazil, has been pushing for a 2% tax on world's billionaires to generate more than $300 billion to help alleviate poverty and climate change. That did have support, though. Argentina, whose prime minister or whose president is a great supporter of Donald Trump, Argentina withdrew support for that resolution. That denied a consensus. They did agree, though, that there does need to be trillions of dollars, not billions of dollars, to finance climate change.
And finally, just quickly, Hong Kong's High Court yesterday sentenced 45 pro-democracy activists, including an Australian man, to jail terms of up to 10 years in a landmark national security trial.
The decision further damages the city's once strong democracy movement and has drawn international condemnation, according to Bloomberg. A total of 47 pro-democracy activists were arrested and charged in 2021 with the conspiracy to subversion under a Beijing-imposed national security law. They faced sentences of up to life in prison. Now, in the end, the sentences ranged from 4 years to 10 years. The Australian gentleman, Gordon Ung, was jailed for 7 years and 3 months. The so-called organiser of the 47 pro-democracy activists received 10 years. Michael?
All right, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Your guest today, William Liu from Wilson Asset Management, all about investing on international markets. Really interesting conversation. It is coming up in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 20th of November, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast. And please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.